If you've had a bad day at work or school, what do you typically do to allow yourself to unwind and let go of the stresses that you might be feeling? I imagine that for some, this might include getting a hot drink like a coffee or a cup of tea if you're British like me, and sitting in front of your computer or your television, watching a new popular TV show, or even the latest upload from your favorite YouTuber. Maybe me, maybe this one right here. And for others, it might be running a hot bath or playing some video games or reading a good book or some fan fiction on AO3. Personally, I have been playing a lot of Resident Evil Requiem in between cramming all the filming that I've been doing before I go on holiday. I have spent my evenings just playing little chunks of Resident Evil so I can finish the game before I go abroad, and that's how I've kind of allowed myself to have a bit of a break from filming and scripting and getting everything done, because, you know, I need to get it done. Although admittedly, this game isn't what most people would call relaxing, but I digress. However, for some people within Japan, the thing that makes them feel better, more like themselves, is fashion. The streets of Harajuku, the strip of Takashita-dori, and the buzz of Shibuya 109 are held in high regard as some of the most influential fashion hubs. Many prominent fashion styles such as Lolita, Gyaru, and Jirai Kei came as a byproduct and rebellion of the current times. These fashions and subcultures often have an element of escapism to them, removing yourself from the pressures of society and the stresses that you encounter in day-to-day life, instead finding a sense of community through both the outward expression of yourself in fashion and also the ability to connect to others who are also choosing to stand out. But one community and subsequent style, or styles as we're going to be talking about, doesn't fit the sugary sweet idealistic view of what J fashion is typically seen as. Originating on 2 Channel's mental health board and then later becoming known internationally through various social media, Menhera, and subsequently Yamikawaii, is a community and style respectively that tackles Japan's mental health taboo through art, community, discussion, and fashion. But now it is time for my usual disclaimer and also a bit of a content warning just due to the nature of today's topic. So firstly, content warning for things such as disordered eating, SH, issues with your mental health, issues with your living situation, and basically any kind of outside factor that can negatively impact someone's mental health. We're not going to be spending tons of time on them, but we're going to be touching on them. I will be doing my absolute utmost to give these topics the gravity and respect that they deserve, whilst adhering to YouTube's quite unforgiving guidelines when it comes to what you're allowed to say and show. It can be quite strict, and so if I do have to abbreviate anything, I do apologize. I don't particularly enjoy doing it, but I will try to do so as respectfully as possible. We're not going to be doing the whole unaliving, pew pew kind of language here. I will try and find a way to navigate the topic, talk about the topic in a way that's very obvious as to what we're discussing. If I happen to touch on a topic or subject that can be deemed as problematic with a level of neutrality, please understand that that does not mean that I endorse or like that behavior or that I encourage that behavior. My real aim is just to faithfully cover everything as much as I can. And before people start to leave angry comments, before they start to go off onto a different platform with a screenshot of the thumbnail and start saying, I'm not watching this, I'm not watching this, before we start doing that, okay, let's just get more than 3 minutes into the video, I beg. I will be tackling this video in good faith, using reliable sources which will be cited on screen as per usual, as well as talking directly to community members who are responsible for a lot of these reliable sources, as well as doing my own community poll, talking to people from within the community anonymously to gain their input and insight as well. This hopefully allowing me to show every possible angle and as much information on what is a very sensitive and often misunderstood topic. However, just to preface, a lot of the information I have gathered, as well as other sources, is primarily from the Menhera Tumblr, because that seems like a consistently reliable source from the people that I've talked to, and therefore it feels like a good place to start with a lot of base information and to cover things that are otherwise less covered elsewhere. However, as always, mistakes can happen. Mistakes are human, and so if I do happen to make a mistake or leave out any information that you feel is pertinent, please feel free to politely correct me down below or link me to better resources that I can potentially use and pin in the video as well. And I also want to say that quite often on various social medias and forums, there can be conflicting information and opinions due to someone's personal inference and bias on the information. At the end of the day, the internet is not a monolith. People within this community are not a monolith, and I am not the oracle. Do not take my word as gospel for literally anything. But again, in this situation, there are going to be conflicting opinions. But hopefully, I have done my best to decipher the fact from the fiction, the fact from the opinion, as best as I can. but we'll wait and see, I suppose. Today's video is sponsored by Sailly. So as you might know, I have been in Japan recently. I'm currently filming this from Japan, wow! And this is mainly thanks to a friend offering me space with them, which actually meant that Sakura season was actually affordable and doable for the first time. However, one of the biggest stresses with traveling to anywhere is making sure that you can get your mobile data fast and effectively as soon as you land. You need data or Wi-Fi in order to use your QR code for the customs in Japan. You need it to navigate the train system and to check your booking for your hotel or Airbnb, and even just to send your family a message to let them know that you've landed safe and sound. And if I used my mobile network from home, which does offer a roaming package, I would be paying £7 a day over in Japan, which for my trip, which I'm currently on, would cost me over £230 just to use my data and calls. It is absolutely just not a good use of your holiday funds. And equally, I've used the airport pocket Wi-Fi before on my first trip to Japan, and it didn't work 70% of the time despite me paying 60 quid for 2 weeks of use. But thankfully, that is where today's video sponsor Sailly comes in. Sailly is a very straightforward eSIM that provides you with safe, fast and reliable coverage in over 200 destinations, all from the comfort of your iOS or Android device. Getting set up takes literal seconds thanks to the clear on-screen instructions, and in my case I literally just had to tap a couple of options and Sailly and my mobile literally did the rest. I barely had to do anything at all to set it up. Sailly has lots of affordable pricing, and they even send you a reminder to let you know that you've used 80% of your data coverage so that you're not caught short, with the option to top up your existing eSIM through the app with a couple of taps. Once again, making it so easy for even the most anxious and inexperienced of travelers. And to save you data and money, they have toggleable security features such as Sailly's inbuilt ad blocker, which stops browser ads from loading in and can reduce your data usage by up to 28.6%. Traveling abroad for work or pleasure doesn't have to be this expensive or exhausting headache of compromised free Wi-Fi or queuing for airport eSIMs. Instead, just download Sailly and rest easy knowing that they're there for you 24/7. And you can get an exclusive 15% discount on Sailly by downloading the app and scanning the QR code on screen or using the link down below and use code Addy at checkout. As you can probably tell, I am sitting here in no makeup late at night in the comfort of a tatami room that I am seemingly allergic to, but the only thing that I'm not worrying about is my data. So be sure to check out Sailly. Again, check out the link down below, and a big thank you to Sailly for sponsoring today's video. At the end of the day, I'm very appreciative because they have saved my skin, actually. I've been using my Sailly eSIM pretty damn religiously out here, so yeah, they've saved me a good chunk of change because I'm not paying 230 quid for data. So as I covered in both my video on Jirai Kei and also Menhera-chan, Japan has two different sides. The first side is this beautiful, picturesque birthplace of stuff like anime, kawaii culture, and the foods that many of us have come to love, such as matcha, katsu curry, sushi, the works. It is the part that tourists are flooding to see in droves. It is the cherry blossom festivals. It is the beautiful landscapes. It is Nara Deer Park. It is all of these wonderful aspects that make Japan such a fantastic, wonderful little place on the planet to visit, and it's why so many people fall in love with Japan to begin with. It's the first thing that they fall in love with. However, the other side of Japan is often only really seen by those who live and work in Japan. It is a very homogenous country that prioritizes the comfort of many over the happiness or well-being of an individual, following these unspoken but quietly enforced rules during your day-to-day commute, when you're at work or school, and even how you conduct yourself in the places that you're meant to relax in, such as your home. And sure, these rules do often mean that Japan's reputation for being safe, clean and peaceful often ring true, but the rigidity that threads together this sense of union and harmony often ends up choking those who struggle to assimilate. Issues such as people shutting themselves away from society and withdrawing from the people around them, which is a hikikomori. Self-ended mortality because you were so stressed and miserable at your job, which is kaorojisatsu. And of course, the taboo treatment of those who are struggling with their mental health or wellness. Let's not forget that Japan, just like anywhere else in the world, has its problems. But due to the way that Japan tackles these problems, or more accurately, kind of brushes them away, hides them away, doesn't address them, a new community ended up forming. And so, according to sources such as the Menhera blog and the Kai Club original scans, the term Menhera was first created over on Japan's anonymous 2-channel BPD board. And it was originally named a BPD board just due to the general lack of mental health terminology in the Japanese language. However, due to a demand of more people wanting the board to be more inclusive of generalized mental health and less specifically BPD, the BPD board was renamed to the Mental Health Board on August 18th, 2000. And around this same time, approximately 2001, the term Menheru was created as an abbreviation of the Mental Health Board, this being given to the board by its anonymous users. And apparently Menheru was also the first kind of neutral term really given to mental health or mental health issues within Japanese. A lot of the other terminology that Japanese language had previously used translated to stuff like crazy, mad, insane, unstable, all of which have that negative connotation to it. Menheru was the first instance of a word that was created with neutrality regarding this issue, which ended up being a pretty significant first step for those who were accessing the board to not view themselves or their feelings and struggles as being this inherent negative or being seen as this bad thing. However, due to people mistakenly calling those who used the 2-channel board Menheru, a new term called Menhera with 2 A's was created instead. The double A's in Menhera essentially being the suffix of ER that we have in the English language. So kind of like someone who is a user or a doer of something, being a doer of mental health. Doing mental health. And then just naturally, this ended up getting shortened to the word that we're now familiar with today, which is Menhera with 1 A. And to be Menhera, there isn't really a checklist. There are no real requirements as such to refer to yourself as Menhera. Many people might consider themselves Menhera if they struggle with things like mental health issues, personality disorders, or things that could factor into amplifying those things, such as a disrupted home life, issues with disordered eating, issues with people at school or their workplace, basically any outside factors that could negatively impact their mental health too. And it is a total misconception that you need to be diagnosed with something like depression or anxiety in order to call yourself Menhera or be considered Menhera. Because again, this was a term created by the anonymous users of Japan's mental health board, who often couldn't actually get any access to a diagnosis or often couldn't seek any kind of medical help for what they were going through out of the taboo of it, out of the way they could be treated because of it, and also because there isn't really a mental health infrastructure that offers much support in Japan, especially at the time. Again, being considered mentally ill was not a good thing, is not a good thing. Japan sees health as something that needs to be fixed, which works if you've got a broken leg and you can be told, hey, it's going to take 6 weeks for you to come out of that cast. But when you've got mental health issues, when you've possibly got lifelong mental health issues, that's just not going to cut the mustard. But in Japan, you need to be able to do your part for society. And quite often when you do have impactful mental health issues that you're going through, that can maybe negatively affect how you're able to contribute to people, and so it's seen as a negative. The idea that you in any way need to prove yourself to be Menhera is totally incorrect. That's not a thing. It is literally not what the community, what the original boards were created for. Anyone telling you this or asking you to prove how ill you are or asking you to provide a diagnosis clearly does not understand what Menhera is and why it was created. Chances are they are a teenager at best, or worse, somebody that you actively want to avoid, because sometimes you do get adults in certain online spaces, as I've discussed before, who will see people struggling with things like SH and EDs and will actively try and groom them because of it and basically be like, oh, you know, you can talk to me about it, you should send me a picture, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah. Anyone who's asking you to prove anything, photos or otherwise, do not give them that access to you. Don't do that. No one who actually cares about this stuff will ever ask you to do that. It's really weird if someone's asking you to do that. Don't give into it. It's a weird level of peer pressure and there's nothing to boast about with mental health issues. And a lot of Menhera's messaging and atmosphere is about harm reduction and recovery, with the most common meaning for Menhera still being a person who seeks mental well-being. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be in active recovery or having recovered to be considered Menhera or be in the community. Many of those who identify as Menhera may still struggle with these issues, may still fall into relapses. That is something that's kind of generally understood within the community. Those things can and do happen. It's part of mental health. But it is common and usually enforced etiquette to not post highly triggering content to places that are specifically Menhera. So you don't want to use the Menhera tag if you're planning to post a really graphic image of something that you've done to yourself. That is not the place all you're gonna do is potentially harm other people. That's not what it's there for. It is not the space to romanticize mental illness, and it's also not the space to post any gore. And that isn't me shaming those things, because I do understand that quite often that kind of behavior can just be a byproduct of mental illness itself. Again, it's almost like that slightly manic behavior that can come as an elation after harming yourself potentially, but also it is quite common for people to have that mindset. It is a spiraling mindset. It's not somebody who is doing very well usually posting that kind of content. But I am saying that posting that kind of content on places like Tumblr under the Menhera tag will often not be received well by the community and those who are using the tag to find community, to find vent artwork, to find harm reduction. That stuff is not going to be helpful. That stuff is not going to be particularly welcome. Just don't do it. Just be thoughtful of how you're using the tags when it comes to Menhera. And another thing I've seen a lot of back and forth on as well is using the term Menhera Kei. And again, Menhera Kei is simply just not correct and not something you want to be using. I think a lot of people assume, especially those who are new to J fashion, that Kei means style. So you would say Menhera style. That's what they think Kei means. And it is an understandable mistake, because if you're not a Japanese speaker, or if you just don't double check these things, by the way that people tag stuff and by the way that you've probably heard of it on social media, like Decora Kei or whatever, it sounds like it should just mean style or fashion. However, Kei stands for type. So calling yourself or others Menhera Kei would essentially come across as you describing yourself or somebody else as one of those mental health types, one of those mental health people, which again, immediately kind of sounds like the negative connotations towards people who are mentally ill. It leans into those unflattering depictions of people who are struggling with depression or maybe a personality disorder as being unstable, volatile, aggressive, mean, dangerous. It leans into the idea that somebody is unpredictable just because they're ill. And this is something that I have seen used in a lot of English speaking spaces since around 2018 onwards, when a lot of international coverage began to kind of go over terms like Yamikawaii and Menhera. And again, it is a mistake that most people make entirely naively without any kind of malice. But it's best to just not refer to yourself, your style, or other people as Menhera Kei, because it's just going to come off like an insult and it's just going to kind of lead into other people misusing it too. The term Menhera is fine as is. Now, as well as Menhera being a self-identifier used by those who are occupying 2channel's mental health board, it's also been used as an umbrella term for the community at large too. And so within the Menhera community, a lot of people would share things such as vent artwork. Now, vent artwork itself is a pretty well-known term, but for the sake of clarity, a few motifs that you might find within Menhera vent artwork can include themes of death, so gravestones, crucifixes, similar iconography, self-ended mortality, so choosing to end one's life, that is a motif, wounds and bruising on your body, medication, heartbreak and grief, medical iconography such as pills, syringes, and similar things, and also some more adult themes too, so you might see stuff like gags, for example. Vent artwork allows an artist to express their feelings, their experiences, and their struggles through a medium that is a little less directly personal, but is also more harm reductive. For many in and outside the Menhera community, vent artwork can serve as a form of self-soothing and a way of taking those feelings that are very negative and removing them from yourself. So you put them somewhere else rather than allowing them to fester inside of you and potentially that leading to you harming part of your body. When I was a CAMS kid, I actually did art therapy as one of the things that they were trying to get me to do. And I found that art therapy actually was one of the things that I found myself engaging with a lot more, because it allowed me to talk to my therapist and allowed me to communicate some of the more difficult things I was feeling and wanted to express but didn't know how to word to that kind of third party that I was communicating with. And so I found vent artwork was a really great way of taking those negative feelings out of my body, out of my head, and putting them down in a way that didn't cause me any harm. Now, obviously, if you're stumbling across vent artwork just randomly on a random doom scroll, it may come across as quite shocking and potentially could even look like fetish to the untrained eye. But again, it's important to remember that vent artwork is often a reflection of the artists themselves, their struggles, their experiences, as opposed to being something to shock or excite other people. After talking to the user Menhera-sama from the Menheratic Discord community, they informed me that one of the first instances of Menhera vent artwork being sold on clothing within Japan came from a Menhera art exhibit hosted by Tumblr user Aoi Uni. Not to be confused with Ai Oni, which is that little purple blue troll guy from the horror games. Different different spellings. And in this exhibit, they had vent artwork, but also some more politically motivated artwork as well. And there was even a performance art piece as well from this exhibit where a woman locked herself in a cage as a commentary on how Japan treats those with mental health issues and also how they view those with mental health issues. And obviously since then, vent artwork on clothing and accessories continued to be made by the community for those within the community. Independent artists selling t-shirts or cute pouches or tote bags with their vent artwork on it, allowing them to make a form of income from their artwork, as well as allowing others to support them and also express themselves and their struggles through the medium of fashion. A great example of an ongoing brand that has done this and continues to do this is my friend Puvithel's brand. They create Menhera artwork and clothing that directly speaks to the experiences of those within the community and those who struggle with mental health or physical health issues. I really recommend checking out Puvithel's store. They even did accessible petticoats and a bunch of really, really cool things, so definitely check them out if you're interested. But this is where we hit one of our first confusions when it comes to Menhera, because if you couldn't tell by the title of the video, I've kind of prioritized Yamikawaii in the title, and yet all I've done is talk about Menhera. Well, thanks to Izaki Bisuko, which is a creator I covered quite extensively in a previous video and was subsequently blocked by, we now have the conflict between Menhera, which was something that did incorporate vent artwork and clothing, and the style known as Yamikawaii. So I actually made my video on Menhera-chan strategically before this one, because it allows a direct point of reference and deep dive on both Menhera-chan and also Izaki Bisuko. I definitely recommend giving that video a watch after this video if you want a full in-depth summary on all of that mess and all of that stuff there. But for the sake of this video not being insanely long, I will give you the cliff notes just so you have a level of information to go off of. So around the time of 2013 to 2014, depending on which source you look at, a struggling university student called Izaki began drawing a vent art character that he called Menhera-chan. This now being the very infamous and somewhat controversial magical girl Menhera-chan. For Izaki, drawing this character was not only an outlet for his more taboo feelings as a gay man in Japan, but also as somebody who had experienced issues such as abuse and mental health issues. And later, this character and subsequent others would be turned into the comic known as Yamikawaii warrior Menhera-chan. These cute magical girl characters juxtaposing the darker aspects of the comic, such as the wrist cut transformations and all of the horrific grief that we see, which ended up bringing these themes and the word Menhera into the wider sphere of kawaii culture. But instead of being the sugary, sweet, innocent, and dreamy aesthetics of Yumikawaii, this comic and its characters were kind of like the antithesis to traditional kawaii. Essentially, Yamikawaii, which is sick, cute. Now the term Yamikawaii did apparently predate Izaki's use and popularization of it, not to mention him trying to copyright it at one point, but whether you like him or not, it is fair to say that Izaki's popularity and artwork did become fairly synonymous with the term Yamikawaii. And this is where we really come to a crossroad between the terms of Yamikawaii and Menhera. Because again, Menhera isn't a term or label that focuses on somebody's outward aesthetic. It is once again a self-identifier for those who feel like they have mental health issues or have mental health struggles, and is also a way of finding community under that term too. Meanwhile, the term Yamikawaii does take the basic motifs and themes of Menhera and Menhera vent artwork, but focuses pretty much exclusively on the outward aesthetic of it. And so from what I understand, you can be Menhera and have literally nothing to do with Yamikawaii, and equally you can dress Yamikawaii but not identify as Menhera or be part or active in that community. And there is a term that is sometimes used by those within the Menhera community, which is fashion Menhera, usually used as a more mocking or negative term towards somebody who typically discovers Menhera through the aesthetics of Yamikawaii and wants to be considered Menhera, but has no interest in learning about it or being involved with the community itself. Again, it's not about having to prove yourself as Menhera, but it's obviously more people coming in wanting the aesthetic of it entirely, which is kind of similar to when people are kind of like, you're a fashion Jirai, which is where you don't have anything to do with the Jirai lifestyle, but you enjoy the fashion associated with it. Similar kind of terminology, but with Menhera, obviously there's a bit of a difference. There's a bit of a difference, but again, adding fashion onto the end of some of these things because they have a subculture element to them, they have a community element to them, is usually to kind of signify somebody's interest only being kind of surface level. Although I also think it's important to clarify that it is understood that even if somebody is wanting to just appear as Menhera, wanting to gain attention as being Menhera, or let's use the internet buzz term of the year, LARPing as Menhera, that in itself can be a sign of mental health issues. Like sure, if you're struggling with mental health issues, seeing somebody come to class with cat scratches on their arm could potentially irritate you when you're working so hard to cover up the issues that you have. But at the end of the day, if somebody's still doing that to themselves in order to gain attention, in order to gain affirmation or community, that is still a problem. That is usually still a sign of something not being right or well with that person. And so again, that's kind of a typically understood thing. Like if you're trying to attention seek by being seen as unwell, that usually means that you probably need a bit of help. You probably need some extra community or support, because that's not normal. And speaking of fashion, what does the fashion usually look like for Menhera versus Yamikawaii? Well, when we're talking about what somebody who calls himself Menhera might wear, the most important thing that we have to consider is the use of Menhera artwork. That is the key component to Menhera fashion. Equally, a lot of this tends to be printed on fairly simple t-shirts, jumpers, and clothing accessories. And this can also be because people who are suffering with mental health issues or physical health issues don't necessarily have the ability to be wearing very elaborate clothing, and equally want something that they can wear in the house to be comfortable as opposed to going outside and being dressed up and showy for. So again, you'll quite often find Menhera vent artwork on clothing that prioritizes comfort that can be worn quite simply and basic. So a common silhouette is an oversized t-shirt or jumper with a Menhera artwork print on it, sometimes with printing on the sleeves. This might be just the artwork itself, but it can also be a slogan like "I hate you," or "I hate myself," or "I want to die." Those are quite common slogans with Menhera artwork. For bottoms, you might have shorts or a comfy skirt, usually partnered with tights, leg warmers or socks. Or if it's more full coverage, then you might see stuff like joggers or leggings. And before the terms Yami and Yume were kind of more widely known, a lot of Menhera pieces and outfits could fall under what we consider to be Fairy Kei. Very pastel, dreamy items. Brands like Listen Flavor were very, very popular for these pieces around the mid-2010s. Meanwhile, Yamikawaii took the palette of Yumekawaii, but made the dreamy aspect turn ill or turn dark, subverting the cute colors and motifs with more medical or vent art imagery. Even in cult party fashion, a completely separate style, Menhera artwork can be found in some of their collaborations and styles, such as this Park Harajuku x Menhera-chan collaboration, something which you can still occasionally find coming up secondhand on places like Mercari JP. And funnily enough, another artist called Marumika-chan also did vent artwork for Cult Party, with Marumika-chan's sad bunny character allegedly plagiarized by Menhera-chan's creator Izaki for the creation of his bunny character Usatan, the one that I have a tattoo of, with his design having to be changed and redrawn in the initial 2 chapters of the Menhera-chan comic. Although again, with changes in trends and also personal style, Menhera also took on darker color schemes as well as the pastel color palette. These would include black, dark reds, dark blues, purples, brighter colored pinks, and basically a wider, more muted palette compared to what were the more dreamy aspects that were originally there. Something which was also reflected in later Listen Flavor pieces too. And another popular artist within Menhera, sometimes coined the mother of Menhera, is Kua Oyasumi. She is a very well respected, very well known artist who has created multiple collaborations and clothing with her vent artwork on them. I'm actually wearing one of her designs in this video. I also have this tote bag which has the exact same design on it, which is part of a collaboration that she did with Madame Chocolat, which I believe is a Spanish J fashion brand. Although I do admit I kind of regret getting these designs because I got both t-shirts and the tote bag all in white and pink, and realistically nowadays, if you couldn't tell, I wear a lot more black in my color palette than I do brights and pastels. So I do kind of wish I had the collection in black instead, because I really love the art print. I think the art print is so good. I'm so glad I managed to get it at all. I'm trying to show it one-handed, it's quite difficult. But yeah, really good vent artwork. But yeah, I do kind of regret not getting that in a darker color palette. If you do happen to have this collection in black, hit me up. I would like to buy it, please. I regret not buying it in black. And of course, as previously mentioned, artist and community member Puvithel also have a bunch of clothing which features Menhera artwork on it. Some of these being for practical items such as their blanket hoodies, their fanny packs, and other kind of like day-to-day lifestyle items for people who do struggle with their mental health or physical well-being. And when it comes to makeup, it kind of is totally unimportant. However, if it is worn, it's often pretty minimal. Again, mostly due to comfort and mental energy. There is no obligation to dress up. Although some do enjoy doing what is known as byojaku makeup, which is essentially when you kind of highlight the under eye area with shades of red to make it look like you've been crying or that maybe you're getting ill, to make your skin look more flushed and to make your eyes look kind of sore and puffy. Although Byojaku makeup isn't exclusive to Menhera or Yamikawaii either, it's actually a style that is quite commonly accepted and popular within Jirai Kei, and so again it is used with other styles that are a bit more darker in nature, because it is just kind of one of those things that makes you look a bit more poorly, looks a bit more teary. And so when it comes to Yamikawaii fashion, it's kind of just a lot more of the same, which is again why it can be quite confusing. However, Yamikawaii arguably doesn't really place any real significance on the Menhera vent artwork, or necessarily the wearer self-identifying as Menhera, even if a lot of the visuals are very, very similar at a glance. When talking to Menhera-sama from the Menheratic blog, they said themselves it was hard to answer any major differences outside of the Menhera artwork used, due to both styles, or at the very least translations of both styles, continually changing again with trends and as time goes on. Although they did say that although Menhera can be kawaii or have kawaii elements in it, it isn't intrinsic to it. It doesn't have to be there. It isn't necessary. Meanwhile, Yamikawaii kind of already has kawaii culture infused into it, even just in its name, Yamikawaii. And I suppose in that sense you could argue that Yamikawaii is generally more palatable as both a style and also as an outward aesthetic because of its alignment to kawaii culture intrinsically. A lot of the Western interpretations of Yamikawaii tend to go a little bit more heavy and theatrical with the makeup and the accessorizing, at times even veering closer to Guro Kawaii, which is a separate style entirely. I think for many international onlookers and participants, it can be quite hard to figure out how much you should be leaning into the more macabre, darker elements of this. At times it can veer closer to Guro Kawaii, at times it can kind of feel disrespectful if you're seeing it as Menhera, but it's obviously quite gory. It's one of those things that there isn't a lot of good English speaking resources on, and so again I think a lot of people have to kind of play a guessing game sometimes as to what they can do with it. And I do think also that is part of a style evolving as well, is different places having fun with it and experimenting with it. You see that when you have a look at Chinese gyaru versus Japanese gyaru. They have a lot more fun with it, they go a little bit more non-traditional. And so I guess you could also argue that Western Yamikawaii interpretations are just an evolution of it. It isn't there to disrespect it. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong so much. It's just a evolution of it. Again, based on trends, based on what is being produced and available. It's just kind of how that works, I guess. However, if we have learned anything from the controversial Risuka bracelet released in 2015 by Menhera-chan and Compé2, it's that overt gore or emulations of harm are often deemed wildly inappropriate. Treating SH like an accessory is just not the one. It's just not what we do. And so at this stage in the video, you might be asking why the title of the video, assumably, unless I've changed it, focuses so heavily on Yamikawaii when very evidently Menhera really is the meat of this video. Menhera really is the source that predates all of this. Like, Menhera really is the backbone and muscle behind Yamikawaii's existence and kind of popularity. And to be honest with you, it's because Yamikawaii became more well-known. It became more trendy and recognizable to many non-Japanese speakers. It is what we kind of had over here to work with. When international folk hear Menhera, they likely do think of Izaki's character Menhera-chan, or they think of the style Yamikawaii. Yamikawaii itself often being seen as a fashion that destigmatizes mental health issues within Japan by many English and international speakers, especially due to that very, very viral Refinery 29 documentary here on YouTube. And sadly, due to the popularity and controversy of Menhera-chan and her creator, the label of Menhera and the history of it usually gets lost in the source. Those who enjoy the fashion aesthetics of Yamikawaii or the idea of Menhera often overrunning the hashtags on various social media platforms, clogging up spaces that were intended for the Menhera community at large to connect with each other and share with each other. I guess you could argue it's similar to the differences between this Menhera-chan and this Menhera-chan. One is Menhera as most people live it. It's quiet, it's subtle, often prioritizing comfortable clothing that makes you feel good whilst you're at home. And occasionally with little details such as darker phone straps alluding to that kind of darker mental health element. It's not trying to appeal to anyone or appeal to any aesthetic, it just is. It is doing mental health. Meanwhile, this Menhera, the Yamikawaii in this instance, is far more visual, leaning into accessorizing and bright colourful clothing that is better suited to a magical girl than a quiet day at home recovering your spoons. It still tells a story about mental health and tackles the taboo with striking visuals, but Yamikawaii doesn't necessitate the need to self-identify as Menhera in order to wear it. You could argue that kawaii culture reduced the term Menhera to its external aspects, all whilst diluting the association with somebody's internal struggles, which is the core part of Menhera, allowing Yamikawaii to become the better known and popular one due to its visual aesthetics and its low barrier for entry. Yamikawaii has unintentionally become the shorthand understanding of Menhera for many, even internationally becoming an evolution or offshoot of it. But many within the Menhera community do still make the distinction between their outfits and their lifestyle and their posts, stating that it is a Menhera outfit and not Yamikawaii, with the two terms often still considered separate, with Menhera again focusing on self-identification and community and artwork. So one of the biggest controversies, or at least the most consistent game of telephone, is people suggesting that Menhera vent artwork or Yamikawaii visuals are romanticizing mental health. That wearing things such as razor blades, box cutters, or pills are in some way encouraging others to engage in what could be considered harmful behaviors. And this narrative was especially prevalent in English-speaking corners of the internet around 2019 to 2021, due to the growing popularity of kawaii culture and J fashion online and internationally. Like I covered in my video on 2020's Kawaii Talk, it was a Wild West era for misinformation about Japan. And as such, with Refinery 29's documentary and also English-speaking creators starting to crop up talking about Yamikawaii and Menhera, this newfound visibility meant that a lot of younger or new-gen enjoyers of J fashion were stumbling across characters such as Izaki's Menhera-chan, or were just exposed to a lot of medical imagery or a lot of vent art imagery, all at a very turbulent time when many of us were locked inside, maybe not living in the happiest of households, and were struggling with our mental health and isolation. It was probably not the best time to discover this stuff for a lot of young people who quite often don't quite have the tools yet as to how to process difficult information or difficult topics or difficult emotions. It was a bit of a, you can understand why people were concerned with kids starting to discover this, because quite often kids don't necessarily have the tools they need to properly process that stuff. I mean, it isn't the first time in Western media that we have seen brands try to repackage mental health as trendy or cool, only to face a lot of backlash. One infamous hoax that reminded me of the Risuka bracelet was the emo Claire's scar tattoos that were floating around the internet. A poorly photoshopped image of this alleged product used to float around the internet in the early 2010s, with many people convinced that Claire's actually sold this product at one point and only removed it because of the backlash. I even found this change.org petition created by Jackie Porter, where over 10,000 people signed to get Claire's to remove these evil emo scar tattoos. Obviously they didn't exist. This wasn't a real product. I think a lot of teenagers at the time knew it wasn't a real product, but a lot of parents, a lot of fear-mongered parents were like, oh my god, they're getting the kids again! Yeah, it wasn't a real product. It wasn't a real thing. That circulated around the internet. You might remember it. That was a big one. Or what about when controversial alternative brand Dolls Kill got into another level of hot water? This time for selling a jacket that featured a razor blade design with the slogan, "A cut above the rest," with many seeing this as an implication or glamorization of SH, in line with other tacky and tasteless releases from the brand. Because if you didn't know, we hate Dolls Kill in this household. They have done so much stuff. Emily Boo made a great video about Dolls Kill. I recommend watching their video on Dolls Kill, but yeah, that was not a great brand. We do not like them in this house. Sorry. They've mentioned me a few times now. We do not like it. We got a two-sided parasocial relationship going on. We be disliking them. Is it really any surprise that through a Western lens, things like rope and bandages, often seen within Menhera, could be categorized as romanticizing or glorifying what is mental health issues, what can be the result of mental health issues. Many people began to throw accusations of glamorizing these things to various creators, stating that these creators were harming their young audiences or that they were actively encouraging people to go and do these behaviors. But this was a real issue that began to carry waves of misinformation, mostly towards people who were staying in their lanes. People creating Menhera vent artwork in the designated Menhera spaces, now catching strays from random netizens who were under the belief that these people were encouraging kids, it's always about the kids, always about protecting the kids, but that they were encouraging kids to go and hurt themselves, encouraging kids to do bad things. A lot of these artists were getting accused of creating their artwork as fetish, as this kind of nasty material, when again, vent artwork is often just a reflection of the experiences and feelings that that artist has gone through, is experiencing. And we also saw a return of this narrative where people were saying you need to cover up your SH because it's triggering and harmful for other people, and that if it's on show, you're actively trying to make people do it. And I think we just need to kind of reconfirm here that healed SH isn't a problem. People are just allowed to exist in their skin. That is fine. It's healed. It's done. That is always going to be there. You can't ask people to cover up their arms and their bodies forever because it makes you uncomfortable. That's not on. The commonly agreed etiquette is just don't show off fresh SH. Don't try and show it off. Don't actively make it a focal point in your video. Like, don't just make it the thing you're showing off. Like, if you're showing it off to show it off, that's a problem. But people just existing with healed in their bodies, you're being silly, actually. Stop that. Stop doing that. You're being weird. And like with a lot of things online and in real life, if you find somebody's artwork or creations in any way distasteful or upsetting, just block them and scroll away. Going out of your way to bother people, especially those who are being very vulnerable about their mental health or their living situation or what they've gone through, is just a dick move. If you're going out of your way to cause them bother, throw accusations at them because of your opinion, stop that. Stop bothering people like that. Just don't be doing it. You don't have to engage with content you don't like. There's dead dove don't eat. You don't want to see vent artwork, just don't look at it. Just don't seek it out. Don't seek it out. You know, just don't. Just don't check it. You don't want to see that? Don't go on a Menhera tag. There we go. If you gotta, it's a cow farm. There's gotta be cows outside. Now, for the most part, this did eventually die down, with many people starting to realize they were looking really silly. Although even now, myself and other creators who like Yamikawaii or talk about Yamikawaii or talk about Menhera will still get leveled with accusations of encouraging this behavior. My box cutter tattoo here, oh my God, the amount of people who are like, wow, you're glamorizing SH there. Brother, oh, give me a break. Knock it off. Oh yeah, I totally got a tattoo on my body to encourage other people that I don't know or will ever interact with to do something. Are you stupid? Let's be so. Why would I get a tattoo like this for anyone else? Also, bonus points if you could recognize where this is from, because it is a reference to a specific anime. The anime itself kind of f***ing sucks. But I just really like the character. I'm not gonna lie. I just think it's a really cool design as well. I enjoy the box cut design. I think it's mint. So yeah, big shout out Poison Enemy Tattoos. Does all my tattoos. Did all my cool leg pieces. Show my leg pieces. Poison Enemy Tattoos. Book with her. She's sick. She's mint. Love you, diva. Love you. And another thing that often gets confused is equating to be this character trope for an anime character or a fantasy character where this person is emblematic of a yandere or has like these obsessive traits in their personality. As we touched on earlier, Menhera is a self-identifying term for people who struggle with mental health issues, who feel like they have mental health issues, and it's also a term used for the community. This whole thing is the first time in Japan that mental health was treated with a level of neutrality and didn't have these negative terms such as crazy, insane, obsessive, leveled towards people who were just struggling, just existing and needing support but weren't being offered it. Equating Menhera as being this two-dimensional character trope is really, really insulting, number one, but is also so incredibly misguided. It feeds into this idea that people who are mentally unwell are automatically and inherently obsessive, unstable, psychotic, evil, crazy ex-girlfriends. Like, it just feeds into that. And again, like, why are we doing that? What are we doing? Dere Wikia? Why is that a thing? It's not a character trope. actually. It's just not. Like, stop that. Knock it off, Wikia. I'm getting sick to my bastard back teeth. Every time I try to fucking research, the Wikia pops up. And now I know why TikTok 12-year-olds are going around policing people with this shit-ass information. Stop it. Stop it, Wikia. I think people forget that wikias and wikis can just be changed by anyone too. It reminds me of when Dan and Phil said, well, Phil specifically said he encountered ball lightning, and then people went on the ball lightning wikia and were like, encountered by Philip Lester about ball lightning. Like, people can just change these pages as well to suit themselves, and so people do just often go in and amend things just because, even if it's not correct. So again, take your wikias with a grain of salt, because they're fan made and God love the fans. We love the fans. We love the fans. But you know, personal opinion does not equal fact. That can happen on the wikias. A recent quiz called the Menhera quiz has been doing the rounds over on Twitter, much to the disappointment of the community at large. But again, as you can imagine, despite this quiz being an obvious piss take, the use of the term Menhera as the title for the quiz, and obviously as a description for the characteristics of being unstable and possessive and yandere within the quiz, just leans into, again, these negative stereotypes of mental health and goes against the whole point of Menhera to begin with. Even the images used within the quiz too are pretty inaccurate. The style for 100% Menhera just being a stereotypical Jirai Kei outfit, a separate fashion and subculture that I have done a deep dive into in a separate video, which again, I recommend if you're interested in Menhera, because again, it's another J-fashion style, it's another J-fashion subculture. Between quizzes like this and also the AI YouTube shorts, which seem to be cropping up everywhere, it's not surprising that so much misinformation seems to conflate Menhera with this idea of being crazy, possessive, unstable, or almost like this anime level of yandere, rather than Menhera being this neutral term for somebody who is doing mental health, living mental health, has mental health issues. And again, having the term Menhera also lumped in with these tags on Tumblr, including 4chan, femcel, female hysteria, and neat, again, just lean into this stereotype, which for most people isn't even true generally. It just goes to show that a lot of people don't understand or respect it. And speaking of Jirai Kei, there's also been some confusion and debate between Jirai Kei and Menhera. You see, a few online users, as usually happens, have started saying that you need to live a Menhera lifestyle in order to be Jirai, or that Jirai and Menhera are near enough the same due to both subcultures having similarities to do with mental health. This all leading to multiple posts, tweets, and debates online. And on paper, I kind of get it. There are a lot of overlaps when it comes to discussions around Jirai Kei, Menhera, and even the aesthetics of Yamikawaii. To cut down a lot of backstory from, again, my full deep dive into Jirai Kei, Jirai originated as a negative term used towards people on host forums, host message boards. Basically either against people who are customers of hosts, or those who were hostesses or doing compensated dating and were considered rude, argumentative, vain, or obsessive. It was usually used towards women as an insult for just not being seen as palatable, polite, or passive. Essentially calling these girls Jirai, which is landmine, because they were unstable and unpredictable, and they were selfish and angry, and they would explode, basically. And as we've already covered, up until the 2-channel board ended up being renamed the Mental Health Board, it was originally the BPD board. And because there were no previously neutral terms towards people with mental health issues, it's kind of understandable that people who are reclaiming the term Jirai feel a sense of similarity and familiarity with Menhera being something that isn't reclaimed, but is there as a more neutral stance on mental health issues. It's basically disallowing people to come up with their own narrative about your mental health. However, the community treatment and goals between Jirai and Menhera are noticeably different. Menhera is a self-given label, whilst Jirai started as an insult directed towards young women and women working in the entertainment and dating industry. Menhera is a desire to want to live even if things are hard, often seeking out recovery and methods of harm reduction to improve your life, whilst Jirai is more so living authentically with your issues. It's not necessarily a lifestyle or subculture that you want to be in if you're wanting to get better. As somebody described it to me, it's not something for people who want to recover. It's quite often the downward spiral that can then possibly allow somebody to sit with themselves and think, actually, I want to get better. Although I will say that a lot of English-speaking Jirai spaces are now prioritizing more harm reduction and recovery and community than a lot of the Japanese spaces. So you do still get that in both, but it's more of a kind of new thing for Jirai to encourage recovery, whilst originally it was just living authentically in the lifestyle, which would include drinking, substance abuse potentially, doing adult work, even if you weren't an adult, because again, it was Toyoko kids having to survive on the streets of areas like Kabukicho, all that kind of stuff. Could you dress in Jirai Kei but associate yourself as Menhera? Maybe. But to automatically put them together, or even suggest that to be Jirai, you need to have a Menhera lifestyle, is just incorrect, and again confuses and muddies the water for both. It is not something that many who find refuge within the Menhera community seem to appreciate the narrative of. And finally, just like Jirai Kei, or literally any other community or fashion style or subculture, just because you have mental health issues, just because you identify as Menhera, just because you identify as Jirai Kei, that does not automatically mean that you are not a nice person. That does not mean that you can't have friends. That does not mean that you're automatically indulging in harmful behaviors. That's not what it means. And equally, just because you do identify as Menhera, or again, similarly, Jirai Kei, which I covered in that video, that doesn't give you a free pass to behave how you want, consequence-free. Yes, your behavior absolutely can be impacted by your mental health issues, by personality disorder. Plenty of people do lash out and struggle when it comes to dealing with close personal relationships when they are struggling. And so they might lash out or say things they don't mean, and that is part of mental health. However, just because that is part of mental health, that doesn't give you an excuse to be an asshole, number one. And it also means that you still have to take accountability for your actions, even if it just is apologizing to the people you might hurt. You don't get a free pass to be damaging to other people because you yourself are struggling. That isn't a very common stereotype with Menhera, I will say. That's far more of a Jirai Kei thing, just due to the Jirai maxing and online community with that. But I do think it's important to reiterate, just because you're Menhera doesn't mean that you're automatically this mean, evil person. Like, there's not really much of a stereotype for that, but I think it's important to really hammer that home. But equally, just because you have mental health issues, that doesn't mean that you get to say and do what you want, consequence-free. You have to exist on the planet with everyone else, and that does mean that you do have to show some empathy and respect to the people around you, as you would want to receive from them. The era of Yamikawaii really has kind of died out more recently, again in part thanks to Izaki's behavior and his controversies kind of making people sour on it a little bit apparently, and more so styles like Jirai Kei and subcultures like Jirai Kei have taken hold. You'll find their fashion and their styles in a lot of different stores. La Ferre, Shibuya 109, you will find it in a lot of places. However, the Japanese and Western communities for Menhera still remain. And you'll still find characters like Menhera-chan or the artwork of Kua or Yasumi being very popular within multiple different J-fashion styles. You'll see Izaki's artwork still popularized within styles like Jirai Kei, as well as just different subcultures too. Again, both of these are very well established and still very popular artists. I am incredibly glad that Menhera and, by proxy, Yamikawaii exist. They've allowed people to not only feel less shame in themselves, but also find a sense of community and a support network that they may otherwise not known had existed. And also from a personal perspective, I do really resonate with Menhera. I always have. I still do in a lot of ways as well. Like, I still feel very connected to it. More so just with the artwork and the things that I kind of read online about it, just because for me, I think mental health has to be kind of a quiet thing. It has to be something that I do keep to myself. And so I do find a sense of refuge and support quietly from the existence of Menhera and the people who post artwork in those spaces and the accessories and items that are within it. I feel like I'm still myself under that identifier. And I'm sure many other people feel the same, because regardless of the fact that although the UK's mental health support isn't particularly good, I will say, having used much of it, it is still comparatively better compared to Japan. And I think for many people who do have to seek mental health services, they can feel dissatisfied at the lack of understanding or at the wait times that they might experience when it comes to the NHS, for example. And so again, places like Menhera, communities like Menhera, can make a big difference to some people and really give that sense of community that they otherwise wouldn't find. And it allows people to also have a space to be a little bit more honest about how they feel and vent a little bit more about what they're going through in a way that is usually harm reductive and can be quite constructive. And just in case you needed to have it reaffirmed, you're worthy of recovery, you deserve to feel comfortable in your own skin, and if Menhera or Yamikawaii make that happen, help that happen, make you feel better in who you are, then I see that as a net positive. But I suppose let me know what you think down below. Have you heard of Menhera? Have you heard of Yamikawaii? Do you like Yamikawaii? Do you like Menhera? Have you learned anything new from today's video? Have you heard some of the misinformation regarding Menhera and Yamikawaii? And has this video helped clarify it a little bit more for you? Admittedly, it's quite hard to do so because obviously there is a lot of overlap between Menhera and Yamikawaii, but the main difference is obviously the community and the artwork. One is very aesthetic and visuals based, and one is far more community and self-identification based. But trying to explain that is quite difficult when on paper, when through a computer screen, they can look very, very similar, and the terminology, especially in English-speaking circles, gets confused and conflated quite often, and so it can be a little bit hit or miss, so let me know if you've learned anything new. I also want to give a big thank you to all the people who did participate in the survey and poll I put out. I had about 50 people, I believe, enter and give all of their opinions on the questions that I was asking, just better allowing me to get a sense of what the community felt surrounding Menhera and Yamikawaii and what it meant to them, and so I'm really glad that people did that. And I also want to give a big thank you to Menhera-sama from the Menheratic blog, from the Menheratic Discord server, who spent their time giving me resources, videos, and giving me better information and answering some of the questions like, what is the difference between Yamikawaii and Menhera? Like, is there any visual difference? Do you know? Because I feel like, again, I could probably give a similar answer, but I feel like it can just feel like you're taking a shot in the dark sometimes, especially when, again, English-speaking resources are thin on the goddamn ground, so I do really appreciate the extra help and information that I was given. And of course, another big thank you is to all of my beautiful Patreon members. We have the Otaku tier members on screen, and our Oshi tier patrons being Nina Hopkins, Falky Gone Missing, Lucy, Shy Raw, Harakivo, Danny16, Sweet Misery, Meryl Lyram, The Galmar, X-Lace_Zale, Cielo Armonia, Neon Ferris Wheel, Florenciaga, Cora Kitty, and Shelby. Okay, it's Editing Annie here. It is currently 1 AM and I realised that I have a bunch of new Oshi tier patrons that I haven't thanked yet for joining the Patreon because I pre-recorded everything before coming away on holiday. So I want to give a big thank you to Hive Angel, Mooney, Onyx and Kira for supporting my Patreon at the Oshi level, and again a big thank you as well to the new Otaku tier patrons as well. I'll be doing my best to make sure that all of your names are included in the pre-recorded footage from this point. But again, thank you for being so patient and thank you for supporting me on Patreon. Starting as low as $2.50 a month, you can get ad-free and downloadable viewing of all of my publicly existing YouTube content. But for Otaku and Oshi tier members, you get exclusive content, extra content, as well as early viewing, ad-free viewing, downloadable viewing, and of course getting your name shouted out or put on screen for the end of the video, and a couple of other perks I'm going to be launching soon as well. I'm just doing a lot of traveling at the minute. I'm filming in bulk right now, so I cannot guarantee when those perks are going to be out just yet, but I have some ideas of extra things I want to do. But supporting me really, really does help. It really makes a difference. But as always, the cheapest and easiest way of supporting me and what I do is by liking the video, commenting on the video, sharing the video, saving the video, and of course hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon beside it to never miss an upload. Use the new hype feature. That's the thing apparently. Let's see what that does. Also, if you want to help me out too, put this video on in the background when you're going to bed, when you're cleaning, doing a task, if you're learning to rollerblade, that was a fun one, if you're cooking, if you're on a bus ride or a plane journey. Put this video on and just play it in the background, because again, passive watch time, it helps a bunch. Just by watching this video, you've already helped me a lot. And again, it does mean the world, because I do spend good time and effort into researching and trying to do my utmost when it comes to making videos like this, which you know, can be a little bit stressful because you do not want to get it wrong. Not in the goddamn J fashion community. You get something wrong, you're hung. You'll get drawn and quartered in the square. they're gonna have you by your feet upside down. Death is upon you. You get something wrong with the J fashion community, I'll tell you that for free. Unforgiving goddamn space. So again, I do appreciate the support because I do try quite hard, believe it or not, to make sure that my content is as well researched as I can. It's why I put sources on screen as well, so people can go and check. You can go and check yourself. But now it is time for the end of the video outfit check and some of your amazing fan art. Thank you so much. If you want to submit fan art, just tag me over on Instagram. It's the easiest way. I wouldn't say send them in the DMs. I don't really have DM requests on anymore. I don't really like taking DMs anymore, I'm sorry. Easiest way is tagging me if you're happy to post it, just because that way I can see it. It's easy for me to see and it'll be on my profile and yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Hello! It is time for the end of the video outfit check and some of your amazing fan art. I'm not gonna lie, I am batch filming today. I'm doing 3 YouTube videos in one day. My eyes are dry. My contact lenses be sticking, but they be shifting as well. Oh boy, I'm gonna sleep well tonight. But we are gonna do the end of the video outfit check, so bear with me as I talk you through it. On my head, we have the AliExpress goggles. We know them well. I do have thrifted ones, but I've had these for 6 years and I will say they are bomb-proof. I wear them a lot. They're just so easy to whack in a suit. I don't have to worry about these. These are flexible, they're comfy. If you are just looking for an accessory that is comfortable and you're gonna wear a lot, I would recommend these. I do love my leather vintage ones, but I'm not gonna lie, like they are quite heavy and they're quite like tight on my cranium, so I will say these are a pretty good bet. That's where I got them. I got them from AliExpress like 6 years ago. Next up we have my safety pin like chain choker necklace from Named Collective, and we also have my Marc Jacobs razor blade necklace from the Heaven collection. I got this in Soho in London a while ago when they still had the physical store. I think they still have the store, I'm not sure, but that's where I got it from. Then this top right here is part of that Madame Chocolat X Kua or Yasumi collection. I wish I had it in black. Again, if I had it in black, I'd be wearing it a lot more. Admittedly, I have worn the hell out of this too. Like this gets a lot of wear. It has had a lot of wear. I am not getting rid of it anytime soon. But again, I do wish I had it in black because I do fear I would wear it more. But it is a really, really cute, comfy t-shirt. Very nice quality. All of the stuff from that collection is really, really good quality. It was a real sleeper hit, I will say. And I really do love the artwork on the front. I think it's a really nice design. I personally really love it. I vibe with it. And yeah, it's a really nice little crop top piece. And then literally bottoms, I'm wearing the same trousers, jorts that I was wearing in a previous video that I filmed today as well, just because comfort is important. They don't go with the vibe at all, but at the end of the day, I'm filming for like 3 hours at a time each and then charging my camera up in between. So you know what? We make it work. We make it work. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye.